All right, welcome everybody. Tonight we're going to be working on metallics. I have been searching my house like crazy for the Pro Acrylic silver, and I've not been able to find it. So I'm using a different silver tonight, but it should match just fine. We will be mixing the silver with some other colors just to get some other depth in color. So tonight the plan is to use silver, coal black, mahogany, and blue, at least to start. We might throw some other colors in the mix here in a little bit. I'm sorry, I've been tearing up the house trying to find the Pro Acrylic silver I bought for this, and I've not been able to find it, so you guys can all hate me on the internet later. And we're working on Robinson Rangers. No, I'm just kidding. We're working on our Clan Wolf Gamma Galaxy Sojourner. If we have a little extra time tonight, I might go and re-demonstrate some glazing, just because I had some questions about that separately. And I found some areas on here that I want to touch up and make look a little nicer. And I didn't work on it at all between last stream and this week. As always, feel free to shout out some questions if you have them. And if the camera freezes, let me know so I am not painting with you guys, seeing what's going on. So I'm going to get some silver, some coal black, and some blue on the wet palette. Contrasting colors are kind of an interesting subject. If you kind of like smack contrasting colors next to one another, that can be not good, but also can be kind of interesting. But you can also be very subtle with your contrasting colors in ways that you put colors that contrast each other next to one another without being too obvious. And so sneaking some blue into our metallics will be a nice way to kind of use that blue-orange contrast without actually just throwing a bunch of blue and orange right next to one another. We may do that later, but right now, that's a more subtle way to get some contrast. So I'm going to mix a little blue and black in first. And I'll grab a little silver, and I'll show you guys the mix on the palette. Although the white balance may be kind of tough, but so let's maybe start with that as a mix, and the white balance is definitely screwing that up. But that's a little bit of black, blue, and silver mixed. Not much water. And what we're going to do is we're going to block in, or paint all the areas that we blocked in last week black with some metallic color. It's important to be kind of neat here, just so you don't slop metallic up onto your orange. You can always touch that up. Sorry. Move the light around a little bit. Can you guys see okay? Hope everybody's having a good week. And I'm trying to be a little more precise here than I was last week, because we're kind of at a next step in the miniature, so we want to be a little cleaner with what we do, because we don't want to have to touch a bunch of stuff up. So we're going to be a little more careful and methodical as we apply this paint. Largely because it just gets a lot messier trying to touch it up. When you're painting over like a light color like orange, anything that's dark takes a few layers to get corrected. Whereas like when we're painting with glazes and shading and that kind of stuff, you can be a little messier because it's not as hard to clean up. I think maybe I'll leave the little insulating part of that plasma cannon. We're not going to do metallic, we'll do a different color just to have a little extra detail there, so I won't do metallics over that. This part probably isn't as sexy as other parts of the miniature, just in terms of what you're able to do here. It's metallics, but if you put a lot of time into your metallics, you can really make them shine. Get it? I'm funny. It's less funny when you guys just let me talk. Yeah, I'm not sure. I wasn't really planning that, but I think that little like cooling jacket near the barrel would be more interesting, a different color than just the metallic we're gonna do. So we'll leave that non-metallic for now, and we'll figure out how best to paint it here a little bit. If the lighting's right. I also may spend a little bit of time cleaning this up tomorrow off camera, just because I'm trying to learn how to paint through a camera, and this is a little sloppy. I'm trying very hard not to mess with it between sessions because I don't want people thinking that I'm trying to trick them. But there's a couple areas on here that just need a little extra touch up and love. Yeah, I'm having more trouble with lighting tonight. I'm not sure why. Oh, that's why. Is that better? It's like right in my face, but can you guys see better now? Sorry about that. Just expose a little ammo area up here. Just made a mess. Not yet. We're still not necessarily trying to be clean with that part. Just trying to get the areas that are going to be this kind of metallic-y color all metallic. We'll use washes and stuff to make the recesses look right later. Washes are tricky because the more like flat acrylic paint you put over a metallic or true metallic, the less true metallic it looks because you're kind of dulling the sheen with a matte paint. But they're kind of needed just to kind of help shade some, because then you can make the darker areas of the metallic look more matte and less shiny, and then you can re-highlight and make some of the shiny areas look shiny with just your metallic pigment. I'm surprised nobody's made a blue steel joke yet, since we're painting with a blue steel color. There's more to painting miniatures than being really, really, really ridiculously good looking. There it is. What is this, a mech for ants? Perfect. Just waiting for somebody to say it. It needs to be at least 3 times bigger. Thank you, Jason, for not letting me hang on that joke. Alright. So first layer on the metallic's done. So what we're going to do next, you Googleize it. My kids have been doing a very bad job at leaving the doors open lately, and so I've got flies in my painting studio, and it's driving me nuts. So we're going to take a little more silver and mix that in with our previous mix of black, blue, and silver to get a lighter blue steel. And what we're going to do next is just kind of highlight this last layer up a little bit. We can try to be fancy with it and kind of do non-metallic metal style highlights. So like this barrel is a cylinder. The light is coming from up here-ish. So the brightest point on there should be there-ish. So now when you have multiple views, you know, you can't just have the light show once, so we'll do another little bling of light there. Now this time, Andrew, we're going to try to not get this paint in the recesses, although if you do, it's not a big deal. We're just trying to build some highlights up with this lighter color. Just like these little vents on the side torsos. A lot of people sometimes are afraid to put metallic paint on their wet palettes. It doesn't really matter. Most people's wet palettes have mold growing in them, so don't. You can always rinse the sponge out. It's not a big deal. Do try to clean your wet palettes regularly, because mold exposure probably isn't a good thing. If your wet palette sponge is starting to smell, it's probably time for a new wet palette sponge. Trust me, I'm a doctor. So. Brush licking is perfectly safe. I don't know what you're talking about. It's internet sarcasm. If I get canceled for my job because I talked about licking brushes, I'll know where to go. Oh, camera froze. There we go. That was quick. Thanks for the heads up. I may have to just bite the bullet and get a new camera. Those are expensive. I mean, once you get first couple layers of highlights done, the metallics start to go a lot faster. It's a little more tedious at first because you're covering more area, but hopefully you guys can see some shiny starting to layer in. True metallics, when they're done right, take a lot of work because you don't have as much control over how the light reflects because the paint has reflective particles in it. So you've got like millions of little particles reflecting, or thousands of little particles reflecting light. Whereas like with flat acrylics, you can control how people see the light you're putting down. So like, you know, in competitive painting, you see a lot of non-metallic metals on pieces, which are very beautiful, and I love painting non-metallic metal now that I've kind of figured it out a little bit. But when you see a piece with true metallics that's done in competition that's done really well, those are pretty mind-blowing. My buddy Jason Newman does fantastic true metallic work. So, alright, next layer up, just more silver. That's kind of where we're at. So darker to light. I try to leave a little bit, when I'm mixing on a wet palette, I leave a little bit of the older colors behind, just so that I can go back to that mix if I need to touch up or something later. So like on this Gauss rifle barrel, if it'll... The bottom of the barrels? Oh, I didn't even highlight them. They're just flat. Oops, there we go. So now like this little cylinder non-metallic style highlight, I'm going to just make a narrower light there on top. And the secondary light. You'll notice that these layers of paint get much more shiny because there's a lot less flat paint in there to mess up the mix. So it's going to be much more reflective. And you can use that to your advantage because those highlights look brighter because you're dulling out your metallics less. We'll kind of undo a lot of that when we do a little washing here in a couple minutes. But we'll do another highlight layer to fix some stuff. Just a lot of back and forth. One thing that's really important if you're going to use like non-metallic metal style highlights is you want to make sure your lights are consistent. So like this back part of this Gauss rifle, trying to make sure that I got a highlight that kind of matches where that light placement is there. Hey, thanks for the follow. But then also this highlight needs to match where this highlight's at up here. And this circle has to have kind of similar light placement to the other spheres that kind of are in the same, what's the word I'm looking for? Same direction or same orientation. Orientation is the word I'm looking for. these kind of vents on the back, like I'm really just trying to put highlight towards the bottom of them because these top parts will be in shadow. Sometimes when you're placing highlights, less is more, especially when you're trying to drive up an effect. Bare metal. Um, you could just paint them like whatever metallic color you want, and then use a sponge to stipple on the edges to do some chipping and stuff like that to kind of get like exposed bare metal. You could really go in the weeds and pull up an old modeling tactic where you like hairspray your mech and sprinkle some salt on, paint a layer of paint over the top, and then wipe the salt or spray a layer of paint over it, then wipe the salt off with something wet. You gotta play with that a few times before you can get comfortable doing it on an actual miniature. But that's an old school modeling technique. That makes it look like you peeled paint off and there's silver underneath. So you paint silver first, spray hairspray, sprinkle on some salt, spray a color on top of that once that's dry, and then wipe off the salt chips with something wet. That's kind of a neat way to do it. That makes it look like there's a layer of paint on top of your silver or your metallic color. But at the scale we're working at, it would be just as easy to sponge on a silver color on the edges and stuff to make it look chipped and worn. Because, a layer of paint isn't that thick. Well, unless you thick your paints, bro. But I've tried salt chipping on mechs and I wasn't super satisfied. I thought sponging looked better. But I also probably didn't do the salt chipping quite right. I think Ammo by MIG makes a chipping medium, which does something similar, which is pretty cool. You spray one color on, let it dry, spray the chipping medium on, let it dry, paint over the top, let that kind of dry, and then you take a brush and you kind of poke the areas with bristles and stuff to make it look chipped and worn, which is kind of a neat way to do it. There's Scott with some jokes. Keeping it spicy out there. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the effort. Palate's getting a little dry for some reason, so we're going to throw on a little Indiana water. Tiramore, does that kind of answer your question, or? So I'm not sure I answered your question real well, and I want to make sure I at least make an attempt. So, yeah, I mean, the goal of these streams isn't to necessarily like turn everybody here into like a competition-winning painter. I mean, I have a few kind of awards under my belt, but I'm by far not like not a Golden Demon winner. But the goal of these is just to kind of demonstrate picking up a mech and a set of paints and painting the whole thing start to finish. And that's kind of the idea behind these videos. So, and also like how I personally do things if people want to know. Kenny's great. He's a good dude. I've thought about trying to do some like one-on-one sessions with people, but it's just hard for me to find time in the schedule. And like I'm not super savvy with like Photoshop or anything, and the guys that do coaching that I like pay for, they do a lot of like Photoshop like overpaints and stuff like that, which I really appreciate. And so I don't do any private coaching, mainly because I just not sure how good I do at it. Plus, time in this schedule is, I mean, with my kids and my job, and my wife's working full time now, which she's really excited about, and I'm really excited for her. Like, I don't want to overcommit schedule wise and then not be able to deliver for people. Like, Kenny could probably give you some great tips. He's a good guy, good painter. Good for you, man. I'm sorry about your injuries, but glad you're turning a frown upside down and finding a way to paint some minis. Alright, that's basically a decent sketch of how the metallics are going to go highlight-wise. So let's maybe play with some colors and come up with some washes or glazes to kind of help accentuate these metallics a little bit. I'm actually going to grab the purple also. Hey, Blitzen. So the Pro Curl purple is a bit desaturated, so it's a little mauve. So it's not as deep, which is okay. Get some purple, get some blue, mix that together. Let's grab some of that mahogany. That'll help hopefully richen up this mix a little bit. It's a little gray, that's not bad. Let's go for some black. More of that mahogany. The problem when you mix like desaturated colors or not pure pigments together is there's a lot of additives like white and stuff in the paints, and so like you could take a white paint and or a yellow paint and a red paint, But if they have like any like white pigment added into them, and a lot of like the non-artist paints will do that, which is perfectly fine. When you start mixing them together, instead of getting like an orange, you get kind of a muddy pink, and that has to do with non-yellow and red pigments in your yellow and red paint mixing together and then making your orange not look orange. Um, Chimera paints are very expensive, but the pure pigments are fun to play with because you really can kind of experiment some with mixing colors, and I really think it's important to learn how to mix colors um, because it just shows you a lot. So right now, I'm just taking all those areas we just got done highlighting and I'm applying kind of a mix of a color like that. So it's kind of a grayish mahogany color. It's a dirty looking brown. And I made that with purple, a little blue, a lot of mahogany, and a little black. I'm trying to keep it off the highlighted parts, but recesses are getting it, shadowed areas are getting it. Try not to let it pool, because when you pool, you'll get kind of chalky type things, or chalky type, or pooling type effect like that watermark. Don't worry, we're going to go back and kind of re-highlight areas in a little bit. Like I said earlier, lots of back and forth, lots of back and forth. If anybody's following or watching tonight and isn't following along, please feel free to like or subscribe or follow or whatever. That'd be great. Um, there's a YouTube channel that I've been putting videos on, Ancient Brushido Secrets. There's 2 videos up. I will at some point redo the airbrushing video because I really hate it. Just haven't had a lot of time this week, so. I appreciate you guys hanging out to watch me slap some paint on a miniature. And I think I figured out how to actually leave the videos up on Twitch. So they should, I think this will hang around on the Twitch station or channel for about a week. Because I think I have affiliate status with Twitch right now, so. I'll let that dry. I noticed, just due to painting on camera, there's an area on the inside of the left arm that really didn't get a lot of paint, and actually you see some exposed metal through. So I've got some mahogany I'm going to kind of throw on there real quick as a wash to try and cover that up, because it looks bad. Can't see it in the normal views, but when I'm flipping it around, it glared out at me a couple times, and while I got that mahogany on the brush, I'm going to go reinforce some of those shadowed areas from last week, just because those looked a little sloppy in hand last week after I got done filming. This paint's about that thick, so pretty thin. You know, one of the Citadel paints I really, really love is I really love Evil Sun Scarlet. That paint is solid. I think that Games Workshop has some plastic in their reds. I read that somewhere, and it makes sense because that's Evil Sun Scarlet gives great coverage. Also a good reason to not be a brush slicker. And I picked the Monument Hobby set because Ares Games Miniatures carried it. And also Monument makes good products, and they're a US based company, and their paints are great, and they're accessible for people, so if they wanted to follow along with exactly what I'm doing, other than when I lose paints of silver, this works really good. I'm just doing some extra little glazes while I'm waiting for that last wash on the metallics to dry. I like the Monument brushes. The bristles are a little soft for me. I like a stiff bristle, but they're good quality brushes, and if you take care of them, they last. It's just a preference thing for me. I wouldn't not recommend them, if that makes sense. I've been using some Winsor & Newton Series 7s, I think, and there's another artist line sable brush I've been using that I really like, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But those brushes are expensive, and I don't dislike the Monument Hobby brushes. Again, the idea with this was to make this project accessible for people. So, Monument Hobby's brushes are very fairly priced, and they work really well. So I'm not trying to knock them. All right, let's get a little bit of just blue. And we're going to thin that down to glaze consistency. So, about like that. Let's kind of go over our highlight parts with that. Just introduce a little splash of color. Mainly on the gun barrels, because those are the big spots. These spots on the knee or the thigh or whatever be okay. Just little hints of color here and there. Add a little variety and depth to these metallics would be nice. The back of this ankle joint's exposed, that'd be good. This is a Sojourner Prime. It was designed by Dale Ida. And it kind of is like a linebacker and an Uziel had a baby. The miniatures produced by Ironwood Metals. Hey, it's Seth Glenn. What's up, Seth? Alright, you'll kind of notice that these acrylic glazes are dulling out our paint. That's not a big deal. We are going to reinforce it here in a little bit. Let's just go for some straight black. Again, thin paint, like, wash or glaze consistency. Let's hit the areas that are supposed to be dark, so areas that are facing down. I didn't even do any glazing on the hand. So let's get the hand. Let's get these areas that are recessed. Those should be kind of darker. Seth, at some point I need to powwow with you about trying to get some music in the background. I meant to do it this week and I just got shellacked at work, so to speak, so. Thanks, man, I appreciate it. The linebacker is a 65-ton mech that moves 6'9" with a pair of Clan ARPPC. It's a Clan Omni mech. There are better variants than the Prime, though. Linebacker D. If you like to get close. Alright. So we're going to go back into our mix from previously, the lighter color, not the lightest, so kind of the middle. There. Kind of bump some of these highlighted areas back up a little bit. When you wash, a lot of these little recessed areas take a little bit too much paint and get a hit, so kind of almost dry brushing the brush bristles across the top there just to reinforce those highlights a little. The areas inside the knee joint. Let's go for some just straight silver now. Try to bling up a few highlights, make them shine. Just little dots. Camera froze again. So little dots, nothing huge. This will be kind of the brightest color in terms of highlights for the metallics. Little dots. Maybe a little scratch there. A little scratch there. Basically areas that are facing up. They're going to catch a ton of light. A little goes a long way. Now, burn effects on weapons like Scorch and stuff, that looks really cool, especially when it's done right. Or like kind of like multicolored, like char, like magenta to blue to brown. That always looks really neat when it's done right. And sometimes when your paint's too runny or watery, you run into trouble like I am with these vents on the side torsos where my highlights are kind of running into the crevices some. So I've got some thin black paint. I'm going to try and clean those up without dulling down my highlights. Like so. Silverback. Starting to look like a mech, huh? What do you guys think? I'm sure yours looks good, Blitzen. I don't know what you're talking about. Alright. Let's maybe get some orange out and do some touch-ups. So I have some Procryl orange and I'm mixing in a little mahogany to kind of make a muddier mid-tone orange here. We're going to touch a few things up while we kind of wrap up tonight. Because I got sloppy. One thing I really like for shading metallics is paints that's shiny, or paint that is kind of shiny. So like stuff that has more satiny finishes. Contrast paints are great for washing your metallics because they have some sheen, and they also don't pool on raised surfaces. They need thinned a little bit, otherwise you get too much. You can get kind of candy coated effects with like contrast paint airbrushed over like a metallic base coat, which is kind of fun. Um, Again, you got to thin it down some, otherwise it's just too thick. And then it'll cover it all up. And we still have our camo pattern to do, so I'm not trying to get too crazy with touch-ups. It's just some areas that are bugging me that are a little too messy from last week in particular that I want to look a little cleaner before I layer on camouflage on top of that. Just because it's a lot harder to clean it up once the camo's down. That theoretically should make lots of sense, right? Fixing a solid color should be a lot easier than fixing something that has camo on it. This little orange mahogany mix doesn't match the underlying orange perfectly well, but it's close enough that it's not noticeable once it dries, or not as noticeable once it dries. A lot of this is going to get covered back up with camo, so it doesn't necessarily like super matter how close they are. I'm going to get a little bit of that bold pyrrole red though to warm this up. For some of these areas that are closer to like the highlight orange color. Questions about metallics at all? Anything that I didn't demonstrate that you guys would want to see, or anything I can explain a little better for you? Um, Kind of, yeah. Sometimes it doesn't matter as much. Like, I don't really keep log books, like notes about how I mix a color. I just kind of remember the colors I use. Um, and just kind of go with it. There are some times it's helpful to know, like, exactly what I did, but miniature painting is an escape, or it's a hobby, right? And I have to be very precise and methodical in my real job. And I kind of enjoy the freedom of just being able to kind of just do and not really worry about how exactly I mix something, which I realize when you're following along can be very frustrating because like a lot of us want recipes and want very exact things, and I kind of approach my miniature painting like not laissez-faire, but kind of just like, well, mix it until it looks like it matches and move on. It doesn't matter as much here because we're going to be painting camouflage over the top of all this Northman, so like you don't have to be super careful about it looking exactly right because the camo is going to break it up so much that the eye is not really going to be able to pick up those subtle differences in the tone of the orange. So I'm hand waving away that concern. Hand waving him. Yeah, happy accidents, kind of. Like, where'd my cover go? Like our good friend Bob Ross. And that isn't to say that people that, like, are very precise and methodical about their mixes and stuff are wrong. There's lots of ways to do this. And if that helps them, that's great. And, like, no harm, no foul. I'm not that kind of guy when it comes to this. I like to be a little more loose and fast with this than anything else. And again, that's because miniature painting for me is an escape, so it allows me to escape my very methodical scientific job and allows me to just kind of create and do and experiment and not worry about it. There's another question. Yeah, they can be used to age a model, I think. Or OCPD, which I probably have a little bit of that, but use this as a way to escape, so. Alright, so next week, let's do edge highlights, and let's maybe try to do the tiger camo. We should be able to crank the edge highlights out pretty quick. Well, we'll play it by ear. We'll do edge highlights, and if we eat up a lot of time there, we'll maybe do a little more glazing or something to help smooth some stuff out. Tiger striping may take a whole video. What do you guys want to see next week? Tiger stripes? Do you guys want to see edge highlights and save tiger stripes for later? What's the preferred, or what's the people on tonight? What do they want to see next week? Edge highlights. All right, so that'll be the main focus then, unless there's another consensus. Edge highlights. All right. Trying to keep these episodes or sessions, under 90 minutes, just because I feel like that's a long video to watch. I won't get that many watches on the YouTubes with big hour-and-a-half long videos, so. Maybe this will take off and I can quit my day job. Just kidding. My wife would murder me. And I love my wife very, very much. And she wouldn't really murder me. Hope everybody has a fun and safe Labor Day. Be careful. Don't do anything silly like driving under the influence or anything like that, but have fun. Eat lots of good food. Drink lots of water if it's hot out where you're at. Yeah, there's a lot of cons going on right now. Dragon Con, Nova Open, Reaper Con's going on. So Nova Open's a painting contest I'd love to try to get into entering one day. It's just hard to get to more than 1 or 2 cons a year. And it's always hard to turn down Gen Con since it's in my backyard, so. LVO would be fun. There's a lot of good painting classes at LVO. That'd be a good one to go to. So, all right, last call for questions. Anybody? Bueller? Oh, we got your brush care. Don't forget, clean your brush after you're done painting. Yeah, I'm glad it's helpful. Like I said, if this is a helpful thing, we'll do another one after we finish this one. I think right now the leading requests are either Eridani Light Horse or Sword of Light. And maybe we'll do a miniature from the Kickstarter. But no, I'm glad these are helpful. I'm glad they're fun. If you've got friends that are into painting Battletech miniatures, tell them. Help me grow the channel. That'd be great. But just want to get the word out. Painting miniatures isn't hard. It just takes practice. Practice is hard. So appreciate you guys hanging out. I'm going to shut things down for the evening. I'll see you guys, I think, next Thursday. I might have a board meeting next Thursday for something I'm a part of, but I'll have that posted up on social media. So thanks for tuning in tonight, guys. We'll see you guys next time.